Welcome to BC Aware campaign, and in particular the executive series, which has become a signature event of BC Aware campaign because it kicks off a myriad of events over the next 2 or 3 weeks. So very much appreciated. If you're coming back for a second or third time, this is, I think, our 4th year in a row. And it's a unique event because it's put on not just by ISACA or BC Aware campaign, but it's actually put on also by the CIO Association of Canada, Vancouver chapter, and by the CPAs of BC, which is the Chartered Professional Accountants. So it's a unique opportunity. We think it's one of the rarest of events on the continent because we're bringing together CIOs, CFOs, CISOs. Today we're also going to be graced by a Chief Audit Executive here on the panel, and we're going to do the intros in a few minutes, and also by a CEO for the first time, also on the panel. And so what makes it really interesting about this kind of event is that we're going to be talking about cybersecurity, and these are the people in a normal organization. For it to work well, these kind of folks are the folks who need to be together within their own organizations. So we're hoping all this networking activity that's going on out there is not just CEOs in one corner and CFOs in the other corner. I hope you guys are doing a lot of mingling, so that's fantastic. I'm supposed to be up here for 10 minutes, so I better keep going. And if I don't start reading this text, right, it's going to take a lot longer. So I'm going to see if I can get to the text and do this a little quicker. So at the beginning here, we're just going to talk about a couple of other events in the BC Aware campaign besides this one, so you can see the full context of this evening. This is not a one-off event. And then I will be calling up afterwards Justin Malczewski from CrowdStrike, who's our title sponsor for all of BC Aware campaign. He's going to be introducing our moderator for this evening, and then our panelists. And just before that, actually, we'll be having Gary Perkins, our executive executive director and CISO for British Columbia government, and he's going to be representing the minister. So let me carry on. Some of the other events that are going on, and two of them started today, are sector days. Sector days are mini cybersecurity symposiums. They're like half a day. Sometimes they're only 2 or 3 hours. But the whole idea is that a security professional in a particular industry sector takes on, leads, curates that whole evening for the benefit of their peers in that sector. So the idea is we're trying to create other mini security, cybersecurity awareness events that essentially generate more content that's relevant to those sectors. And we've chosen sectors that are really important to the BC economy. So if you go to bcaware.ca, you'll see all of the events, and those 5 sectors are the local government, which is really important right now. We hear about all these ransomware attacks at the local government level. Retail, lots of great retail chains based out of Vancouver. Energy, resources, and mining, we had that today. And healthcare, we had that one today as well. So great success over at VGH. That's the other sort of endearing aspect of BC Aware campaign, is that these events are happening all over the province. Every year is a little different. This year we've got events at BCIT, we've got a couple of events on the island, and we've got events throughout the lower mainland. So it's kind of fun. It's sort of like having an open house on Boxing Day. You don't quite know who's going to show up each year. And that's what happens with BC Aware, is we have kind of a plug-and-play model, and different organizations get together, whether it's vendor community sponsors, different ones each year, or whether it's different associations that come on with ISAC and help us out. Some of them stick around each and every year because it's so rewarding for them. For example, the CPA BC group, we do a lot of stuff with them, and we kind of are carrying on with some of that innovation this coming spring. May 20th to 22nd, they are having for their 33,000 members, which many of them are CPAs, and then the others are students ready to become CPAs. 33,000 members across the province. They have an annual summit every year called the Pacific Summit Conference, and it's also here in the Vancouver area. They are endearing ISACA this year, or granting us the opportunity to have our own track. So we're going to have an ISACA Vancouver track. They're going to have a business and a leadership and a technology set of tracks, and they're giving us a fourth track for the first time. We've had the opportunity to go out amongst our 650 members and look for experts who would be willing to present their area of expertise, their ISACA expertise in IT audit, IT risk, governance, and cybersecurity to CPA members. So it's kind of exciting for both organizations. So that just gives you an indication. Another indicator of our BC Aware campaign model. For the first time this year, we're also joint venturing with Business in Vancouver magazine, and we're going to have another event. I believe it's on Tuesday, February the 4th, and we're bringing in the UK Information Commissioner. So she was Elizabeth Denham, used to be the BC Privacy Commissioner, and also Assistant Privacy Commissioner for Canada. But she's now moved on, and she has a staff of like 600 people. Like she went from 38 people to 600. So it's big stuff. And she's also the chair of an organization that's made up of all of the privacy commissioners in the world. So that's the Global Privacy Assembly. So she was also the one who basically faced Cambridge Analytica and Facebook after the 2016 election. So she's a big part of the war on the weaponization of social media against democracy. So she's a big part of that, and I welcome you to check out that event. That you can look at either biv.com, Business in Vancouver, or bcaware.ca. You can get your tickets for that. Wow. Is that the first page or the first half hour? I'm not sure. We're almost there. I think the next thing I want to do is definitely highlight the vendor community at BC Aware, because without them, we can't do it all. We can't do this sort of thing, not on this scale, not on this level of quality. And what's beautiful about this group is at this point in the sixth year, right? Sixth year. It's kind of like a who's who of security vendors. So they're really finding BC Aware an excellent opportunity. So I want to start off with indicating to you CrowdStrike is our title sponsor this year. And you may have heard of them. I don't know if you have. And then KPMG is our diamond sponsor. And then platinum sponsors, we have Splunk, Cisco, and TELUS. TELUS has been with us since the very beginning, just like Elizabeth Denham has, actually. And then also AWS. So Amazon, new to town, but they're already new to BC Aware, so they've jumped on this opportunity as well. We have a number of gold sponsors. I'm going to run through them really quickly, if you don't mind. Armis, Beyond Trust, BlackBerry Cylance, CyberArk, Darktrace, F5, Fortinet, Forescout, NY Institute of Technology, NTT, Okta, Optiv, Palo Alto Networks, Proofpoint, Sophos, Standard Fusion, Tenable, Trend Micro, and that's it, Trend Micro. But we also have, but wait, if you call now, you'll also find out that each of our sector days also have their own sponsors. So we had CDW, KPMG was there again, VMware Carbon Black was involved in the health one this morning. The Municipal Finance Authority of BC is involved in the local government sector day, and we've also got PwC. Finally, there are also some community sponsors that have helped us out, usually in kind or in some other logistical manner. I want to point them out as well. So BCIT Hitachi is involved, I believe, tomorrow, Justin, in the awards. So tomorrow is one of the big events, BC Aware Day. I'll get into that in a second. But at the end of the day, there's actually some cybersecurity leadership awards that go out. This is our second year in a row, and Hitachi's involved in the awards for that. Van City's involved, City of Surrey, Girl Guides of Canada. We've introduced them into the environment. They've actually created a badge now, I believe, for their uniforms, for their members. That's a cybersecurity badge. And, it sounds like a bit of a tangential thing to what we're doing here in our suits and business clothing, but at the end of the day, we all know that there is a shortage of folks in this field, and that interest has to be kindled at a young age, and it has to be kindled at every venue that we can, including Girl Guides. So it's fantastic that they're doing this, and we want to help them out. So you'll see them, I believe, at tomorrow. There's a booth set up with them, and they'll be circulating around with us. I think the last thing I want to do is I want to point out that where is Katie? There she is. That's Katie. Setelniska. Oh, is that close? Setelniska. I was practicing for like at least 7 minutes. 8 or 9 times. Setelniska. Okay, never mind. Okay, sorry about that. Starts with an SH sound. I know that part. Okay. Sorry, Katie. But thank you, Katie. Katie is the chair of the organizing committee of the BC Aware campaign. So she's done an absolutely amazing job this past year, and it really is a year's worth of logistics and planning. I hate to say it. So let's give her a hand. Thank you, Katie. I will now pass it on, I believe, to Gary Perkins. Where is he? There he is. Come on up, Gary.
Good evening, everybody. It's great to see you guys again. I'm talking about my favorite topic, which is cybersecurity. My name's Gary Perkins. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for the province of British Columbia. And I'd like to start by acknowledging the land that we're gathered on today is the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. We thank them for allowing us to meet and learn and gather on their territories. Now, the Honourable Selena Robinson, Minister of Citizen Services, expresses her regrets about not being able to attend this evening and asks that I speak on her behalf. As you may know, the Ministry of Citizen Services takes privacy and security very seriously, especially when it comes to protecting the information of citizens, and also with expressing what are best practices and spreading awareness throughout the province, wherever you may find yourself, and really across the country through really important events like this. So it's great to see everybody gathered here today sharing thought leadership. I know that I believe very strongly that citizens deserve to be able to conduct their online transactions, knowing that the information that they've entrusted to us is secure. Oftentimes you hear about people protecting their information when in fact it's not actually their information at all, it's that of their clients or citizens. And if you're familiar with the challenges facing the BC government, you'll know that on any given day we face 308 million unauthorized access attempts daily, or 3,565 a second. So if you think about the time it takes me to say this sentence, you'll understand the kind of the challenges that we're facing. So I don't need to tell the folks that are in this room that, of course, cyber attacks increasing in frequency and sophistication, more targeted than ever. And we've heard some of the, some people call it fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But an estimate is just an estimate. But they say global cybercrime by 2021, how much is it going to cost the world? $6 trillion. I heard it referred to earlier as, I'm going to get this wrong, but the single biggest movement in money revenue anywhere, and that's outpacing the drug trade globally. So if you wonder why all the cyber attackers are out there, it's because there's money in it. And of course, the organizations that are looking to solve this problem, and there are many vendors here willing to sell you solutions that will assist you in doing so, are going to be willing to spend up to $1 trillion doing that. Meanwhile, as Ed just referred to, we're faced with the growing cybersecurity talent shortage at 3 million globally presently. I heard that 2 million of those are in North America. So either we need to start manufacturing some more human beings, or we're going to have to entice some other folks into this field, and as Ed says, start at a younger age. So again, I believe that there's strength in numbers, and I think that when gathered here today, we shouldn't be simply admiring the problem. In fact, we should be collaborating toward a stronger future together. I really think that it's in everybody's best interest. So I really look forward to seeing what the panelists here have to share with us today. Thank you very much and have a fantastic evening.
Great, thank you, Gary. That was under an hour. That wasn't that bad. I had my seatbelt on. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Justin in just a sec, but I just want to point out that out of the sort of usual 9 or 10 events that we have in BC Aware campaign, ISACA Vancouver itself has its own event, and it's actually called BC Aware Day. And it's a full day tomorrow of lots of great content, great speakers and topics. But the keynote speaker is a really special one this year. We've actually been able to bring in Brian Krebs. I don't know if anyone knows Brian, who is a Washington Post journalist focused on security. Also a world-famous blogger, and has also embedded himself in all sorts of corners, dark corners of the dark web, so that he can come back and tell us some realistic stories, and also to explain how things are working back there. So we're very excited to have him. I'm not sure where he is right now, but I heard he's in the room. Are you able to? Is he here? Anyone? Not anyone, just Brian, actually. Okay. With some luck, he might be here in time for the Q&A, and maybe ask you guys some questions, keep you guys honest. Yeah. So, okay, without any further delay, Justin Malzuski.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to keep this really brief, but I just want to say how proud I am on behalf of the BC Aware Organizing Committee of the amazing series of events that we've curated again this year. It's a sight to behold. It's many, many months. It's actually, we start planning it the day after the last year ends, and so this is the culmination of a ton of work by a lot of people. I also want to just say thank you to the leadership from my company for not only writing a big check to be the title sponsor, but putting up with me investing a lot of time and effort in this. It's not necessarily what they pay me to do, but they are very patient, and they believe just as strongly in the mandate of what BC Aware is all about as I do. So I know that we're all here to hear what these panelists have to say, so I'm going to just jump right in and introduce Brian Baker. I'm going to let the rest of the gentlemen up on the stage introduce themselves. But Brian is a senior executive partner with Gartner. We are big fans of Gartner at CrowdStrike. We have sort of a mutual admiration society going on, and so we're very thrilled to, as the title sponsor, to have you here, as well as BC Aware. Brian is an accomplished IT executive. He has held leadership roles both in public and private sector organizations in British Columbia and beyond. For the past decade, he's been a strategic advisor to CIOs and CTOs for Fortune 100 companies across North America. And he currently obviously holds a senior executive partner role with Gartner. So come on up, Brian, and take control and introduce your panelists.
What a great turnout tonight. So hands up, how many of you here are to watch and learn from the panelists? How many are here for the free beer, wine, and appetizers? Pretty good. So I also want to mention that in Ed's opening, he referred to our wonderful panelists here as coming from normal organizations. And I'll tell you from meeting all of these people, I think it's pretty abnormal organizations that these guys come from. But it's one of the reasons why we selected these panelists, is because they actually can share their experiences in a really diverse set of organizations that will come out in the conversation. The last thing I want to say before I get them to introduce themselves is there will be a Q&A section for you after our break. So I have a number of canned questions that we'll go through. If you have further discussion or want to ask more questions to them afterwards, you'll have an opportunity during that break. The other really nice thing for you guys is there's some really bright lights back there, and they can't see who's asking the question. So feel free to zing them because they can't catch you afterwards. All right, so I'm going to start over here with Jeff, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
This is working? Yes. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you to the organizing committee for the opportunity to speak to you tonight and be part of the panel. Jeff Erdman. My title is VP Risk Management for Finning International. I don't know if you are aware what Finning is. Finning is a world's largest Caterpillar dealer. We operate in Western Canada, Northwest Territories, South America, Chile, Bolivia, Argentina, and the UK and Ireland. We're about 6.5 billion top line. And my mandate is enterprise risk management and internal audit. I have a team of about 20 people worldwide. Part of the thing tonight was to ask about your cybersecurity experience, and some might talk about breaches, but what's top of mind to me today is we're operating 400-ton trucks for a client or customer in the oil sands with no driver right now. Autonomous solutions are here, especially in the mining industry. And notwithstanding the fact that we have to make sure that those autonomy solutions work correctly, in the back of all of our minds these days is what if a hacker gets in? And so cybersecurity for me is not just within Finning and whether Finning is going to get hacked. It's now expanding beyond into the solutions that we're providing to our customers. So thanks again, and I'll pass it over to
Oliver.
Thanks, Jeff. My name is Oliver Grüter-Andrew. I'm the Chief Executive Officer and President of an organization called Ecom 911. Maybe many of you are familiar with us. We answer the 911 calls in British Columbia. So if you have an emergency, you call 911. It's one of our people that says, do you need police, fire, ambulance, and for which city? What you may not know is that we also then handle the next stage for 33 police departments and 40 fire departments, which together account for about half the police and fire calls in British Columbia. So if you're in Vancouver, we're in Vancouver right now, and you asked for Vancouver Fire, the next person speaking to you would also be an Ecom employee, as would be the person that makes sure that the right fire service gets to wherever you are to give you the emergency help that you need. Whenever you see a group of officers out in the streets, you see them talking to their lapel radios. In the Lower Mainland, we operate that radio network that all police, fire, and ambulance, as well as other emergency-related services like Coast Guards, parts of Canadian Border Services, use to communicate with each other in emergencies. In addition to that, we are the operators of the British Columbia policing record management system and computer-aided dispatch system. So British Columbia is the only jurisdiction in Canada and one of the few in North America where there is a single record management system for all police records. So every police officer, and there's about 10,000 of those in British Columbia, no matter which department or RCMP detachment they work for, work through that system to address their cases, register information, and the system contains all case information as well as private particulars of officers, home addresses of judges, those kind of things. So with that, you can picture that security, cybersecurity, is a top-of-mind item for us because what we're protecting is very precious. We're protecting public safety in the first instance, and officer, firefighter, paramedic safety. And the information that sits behind it is potentially valuable to somebody who might want to make a gain out of that or cause disruption. And so it's an important topic for us. I've been in this role for 2 years. Prior, I had about a 14-year career as a Chief Information Officer or VP IT, respectively, in different industries, including healthcare, post-secondary education, retail, utilities, and I had a consulting career with Accenture prior to that.
Thank you.
Can you guys hear me? Good. Eric Berg, I'm a partner with KPMG. Most of you know what KPMG does. I am the local BC lead for cybersecurity and our national lead for emerging technology risk services. I've been with KPMG for a fairly long time. My primary clients span CFOs, CIOs, Chief Internal Audit, along with board. And we deliver services related to cyber strategy, cyber transformation, cyber defense, and response services. Prior to KPMG, I was with a international engineering firm focusing in on IT operations and a little bit of system development. Enough that I knew I shouldn't be doing system development. So got out of that pretty quickly.
Good evening. I was thinking to start by saying how happy I am to be here, but I think I'm going to change that and say that I'm extremely intimidated and humbled by the quality of the audience. The fact that you guys put the hands up and saying that you all want to learn from us didn't help, by the way. Mihai Strusiewicz, I'm the VP of Global IT for Colliers International. Colliers International, it's a leader in integrated commercial real estate services, 3.3 billion in revenue, 2 billion square feet under management. We do that in about 68 countries with about 17,000 people. Cybersecurity is top of mind, not only for me, but for our board. I can't remember who said about, whose data you are protecting. It's our clients' data, which is really, really important to us. So, equally like you guys, I'm looking forward to learn something tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. So the panel tonight is here to talk a little bit about cybersecurity governance. So we have a lot of conversation, a lot of vendors that understand about the technology and some of the processes that we go through. But I wanted just to define governance for you as we go through this conversation. So really, governance around cybersecurity is the cornerstone of every security practice. It sets and manages the accountability and decision rights around security. Your governance decides what to have as acceptable risk, what controls to have in place and to accept, and how effective are those controls. So keep those in mind as we go through the questions and conversations. We'd like to keep it at that governance level. So to start into our questions tonight directly, I'm going to start actually with Eric. And Eric, what has been the biggest driver in the evolution of cybersecurity governance in the clients that you work with? And how do organizations, particularly at the board level, view cybersecurity governance?
So I would say the evolution, the evolution has been happening over, I would argue, a long period of time. It's drastically gained speed, is a little bit of a hockey curve over the last 5 to 10 years. Obviously, public breaches unfortunately help the notoriety and elevate the importance of cybersecurity beyond an IT risk. It's a business risk. It's at the board level now, which is fantastic. Also, a couple of other kind of symbols that you can see turning the tide is around when you see kind of organizations such as CPA developing thought leadership around how the board should be governing cybersecurity. I mean, that came out many years ago. And you see indicators like that across other associations not related within the IT or security field, which is, I think, extremely important. And it's at the board level, you give the definition around governance. To me, I put governance into two pretty simple buckets. One is you got to manage the risk of the organization, and two, help set direction. Managing the risk and setting direction, you have the accountability and the roles and responsibilities, but it squarely fits in the helping manage the risk and safeguarding of the assets of the organization.
Right. Good. Anybody else want to add to that?
It's
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, so I've been with Colliers for about 5 years, and it was very interesting. I was actually looking forward for this question. 5 years ago, I'm taking on this role, and one of the first things that the board is asking me in the first meeting we had, how secure are we? And I wasn't sure exactly how to answer. I was very new on the role. I didn't do any assessment, and I said, I don't really know, which they actually appreciated very much. But the next question was about, really, how secure should we be? Because we don't really do a lot of online transactions. We don't have clients' data, so maybe we don't need to be that worried. So over the last 5 years, what really changed for us in governance was what the clients are demanding for us. So basically, we came from that point of protecting something that we may or may not have to the ability to actually do business. So the governance around cybersecurity has become a key topic on in every meeting, and it's all about, will we be able to do business in this sector or no? And that was one of the biggest change I've seen in the governance.
Thank you. Well, it leads into, Jeff, I'm going to ask you the next question, because it actually kind of leads into, Mihai started down that path, and that's describe the way that cybersecurity is governed within your board. And what that means is it a standing topic? It is something they ask you to come in and talk about? How's it governed there? And I know you're responsible for risk, so you can answer it from the whole risk perspective.
Yeah, how many board members are in the room today? There's a couple board members. So when you're a board member, you have two, I think, main concepts that come to mind when you step into a board. First is fiduciary duty. And fiduciary duty is, to Eric's point, is managing the risks of the organization or overseeing them or making sure that they are managed appropriately. And I would say from a cybersecurity perspective, the impact, when we look at risk, we look at impact and likelihood. The impact is gone exponential and the likelihood is increased. So therefore, it's a board issue. The director's liability issue is about understanding the standards, because when you come to, if you're ever in court, you're going to be really measured up on, did you do the right things? Did you follow the standards? Did you do what you had to do? And when you come to standards, you will go to ISO, you will go to COVID, you'll go to NIC, you'll go to all these different sources. Now the NACD has come out with the Director's Cybersecurity Handbook. Now that is now an actual corporate directors association coming out with a handbook on what directors should be asking about cybersecurity. So I'm kind of actually number one before I get to number two here. It's extremely important for boards. So if your board is not engaged in a cybersecurity discussion, you need to explain that they need to be there. With respect to finning, what we do is we present to the audit committee at least once a year and to the entire board once a year. So we're getting 2 board-related discussions around cybersecurity a year. And our CISO, Susie Smybert is her name, is a fantastic professional, well-respected already with a few awards last year for her efforts for cybersecurity and finning. presents along with myself. Actually, we co-present, so we're presenting a unified voice in terms of our cybersecurity stance. We measure ourselves on a maturity model. When Susie came into her role, I came into Finning about 8 years ago. Susie came in 2 years after I did. We were, I think, far behind in terms of any comfort level for any board member in terms of cybersecurity. Now we're getting awards within the marketplace. So it's really that at the end of the day, Brian. It's detailed presentations. We identify the key, what we think are the key cybersecurity risks within Finning, what their current status is, and what we're going to do about it in the next 6 months when we come back and report to you again.
Great, thank you. Mihai, this one's for you. Your role has changed in the last little while to take on the global IT. So you mentioned all the countries you're in. Tell me a little bit about how cybersecurity governance is different in this global world.
I knew it's coming and I still don't have a good answer. Okay, I'm kidding. Is the scale. The scale and the diversity, which actually it's very different. The issues are the same. The problem is that it's very hard to come with a one-size-fits-all. And you need to take a way more nuanced approach to cybersecurity. You can't, for example, apply the same technological solution which has the same cost in North America to one of your countries which are lower revenue producers, and they simply can't afford it. You need to take in consideration cultural differences. There are places where you can actually tell, and there are places on which you need to discuss, and you need to come to consensus and other things. So if I would summarize everything, it's scale and diversity are extremely different, and they are the key factors to make the cybersecurity in a global organization different than in a local or national one even.
Very good, thank you. Oliver, as a president and CEO, how do you stay on top of the cybersecurity trends?
I look at my VP Technology Services and say, what you got to say for yourself? It's one of the nice parts about being president and CEO. It's a little facetious, but not entirely, because part of a well-run corporate team is that you understand where the expertise lies. And just because I used to be in a CIO position doesn't mean that I try and insert myself into those roles now. So for me, the key is to have the right level of expertise and insight within the organization. And I would say that's what the board is expecting of me as well, because the board's job in terms of management is to manage one person, and that's me in this case. And so they look to me to say, what is it that you have in place? And if I say, well, it's my brightness and brilliance, that's not going to go very far. So having the right people in place and having the capability, whether they're on the employee side or whether you bring in outside expertise, comprehensive picture of all of that. As a CEO, that's what makes me sleep well at night.
Mm-hmm. And we have an interesting group of backgrounds and of responsibilities here. Does anybody else want to jump into how you keep up to date with this stuff? So do you do a lot of peer? Do you watch the media? Do you watch blogs? Where's Brian Krebs? Does he have his blog out? Anybody else? All of the above.
To me, there's so much coming at you at one time. I've turned to a little bit more kind of micro-learning, so smaller snippets on some very specific topics. It might be 30-minute podcast, it might be a 2-hour or 4-hour session, but when you're not talking about certifications or anything like that, we're going away from kind of the long 5-day classroom type sessions and more agile, just-in-time training on the topic that you need to come up to speed on, or the latest threats that are constantly being published on a daily basis.
And I also find that the podcasts, the microlearning, like you say, are great because so many of them can be shared out to your business partners as well. It's not just you. So, yeah, thank you. Jeff, describe the way that cybersecurity is managed as a source of enterprise risk.
Source of enterprise risk. The person who's head of enterprise risk management needs to speak to that, I would assume. Well, it's a top risk. So within Finning, our enterprise risk management program is a bottom-up exercise. So each region basically has a risk register, and we update that on a quarterly basis and solidify it and report it to the audit committee, now our governance and risk committee, and to the board. Within the top risk profile is cybersecurity, and we show the trending of that particular risk on a quarterly basis. So it's either going up or it's coming down, and then we also talk about what its residual risk rating might be. So it's alive and well within the ERM program, but it's really easy to say when you've got a line item says, "Hey, cybersecurity event could damage the financial reputation of the company." So, we rely heavily on our IT security team. We're in contact, risk is managed, I think, on the day-to-day. For the board, they need to understand that we're on it and what we're doing about it. But the real reality of it is that the constant contact, the understanding of where things are happening, data breach potentials, emails coming in, all these sorts of different things that are going on is really, really managing the risk from an ERM perspective, and getting comfort there is at the end of the day what we're about. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Eric, this one's over to you. So what do your clients find are the toughest or most challenging security events? And by events, I mean network intrusions, ransomware, customer data breaches, etc., and why?
I'll go to a technical level and also a management level. So I feel that organizations have been typically good at in the prepare and protect part early on in the life cycle. A little bit worse, or areas for improvement on the detection and monitoring side. And I feel a ways to go on the response side, although a lot of organizations, and I think from a governance perspective, are realizing that and asking the questions, do we have a cyber incident response plan in place? Have we tested it? And it's not a once every 3 years. It's becoming an annual exercise just because of the likelihood of it happening has drastically increased. So I think whether it's a data breach or a ransomware outbreak, I think that the biggest challenge is not specifically the type of incident, but the overall response that organizations take to mitigate the impact once it happens. We all want to get into a defensible position as it relates to cybersecurity. Breaches will happen. It's how you respond to that, I think, is an important component. And I'm going to do what a politician does, and I'm going to answer my own question based upon, I'm not going to answer your question, but I'm going to answer my question. Is related to risk tolerance. So this goes to the question of, what is a big challenge? Is getting boards and management and IT operations across all three lines of defense getting on the same page as far as what is our risk tolerance? What are, simple questions like, what are our crown jewels? You think it's an obvious question, but you don't necessarily get consensus amongst the management as far as what are the crown jewels and what do we need to protect. And until you get to that point, It's difficult to wrap up like a proper security program in place, and then the proper investment and proper monitoring and oversight from a board perspective around that complex question and answer of our cybersecurity tolerance and appetite.
Perfect. Jeff?
With what Eric's saying, but when I think about my own organization, Finning, and we've obviously thought about this a lot, like where are we vulnerable? And we're not super financially vulnerable when it comes to cybersecurity, but reputationally wise, we're very vulnerable. We're very vulnerable. And I mean, for me, it's the ransomware type of, not to put Goldcorp out there, but it was all very publicly understood that the CEO's emails were hacked and could be released out into the marketplace. That's where we're going to see potentially a drop in our share price, and that's like, that's a huge amount of money. So we're vulnerable in the reputation. I think that's those types of breaches are very, very damaging. Yeah.
Anybody else want to join in on that one?
Well, I think from our point of view, because we're not a commercially focused organization, we have a public value target. The vulnerability to me is in any kind of denial of service possibility. And what we've become, or maybe I should speak for myself, I've become more concerned about recently is the possibility of state-sponsored attacks. You don't get much money out of hacking our databases unless you're after something really specific. But if you want to cause disruption in British Columbia, one place you could go is to disable 911. And that would cause chaos pretty quickly. So those are the kind of things that would keep me up as a worry.
Thanks. Mihai, did you want to add anything?
I never thought about classifying the incidents by in this way, like it's a ransomware versus who knows what kind of a network penetration or stuff like that. I think those are more technology areas, and some of them are more complicated than others. I unfortunately witnessed a different kind of issue recently, an attack that you didn't know if it happened actually, a claim in dark web that something could have happened, and I found that one difficult to deal with because you're playing with ghosts, and you don't even know if you're wasting your time or something happens there. So I think it's a more interesting type of attack that is different one, but I think all of them are damaging depending on your crown jewels and your risk tolerance.
Agreed. Thank you. This one goes to Oliver. Do you believe that cybersecurity governance needs to evolve further than it is today, especially now that it's not just an IT thing?
Yes. It depends on directionally within the corporate structure where you look at growing it. My belief is that it needs to primarily grow horizontally across the organization. So I'll start with the negative. I don't primarily seek to have board members who are experts in cybersecurity or have a personal experience in those things. Largely because there are 100 topics that are important from a risk management strategy point of view that the board has fiduciary responsibility for. You can't possibly have everybody on the board be steeped in all of those things. To me, what's meaningful is that across the organization, we have to raise the awareness of cybersecurity, exactly as you say, Brian, not just being an IT thing, because it used to be what you leave to the CIO, and then we evolved to having CISOs as dedicated functions, but they were really still seen as part of the IT thing by most other executives. But to understand that cybersecurity can include the release of information accidentally through systems without actually breaching any cyber policies and practices. I don't know if anybody saw the embarrassment in the UK a few weeks ago when the New Year's Honours List was published, and what went up on the government website was not only their names, but their home address, their cell phone numbers, and this included police officers and judges and performance stars, and there was no breach in this, right? There was a human error that was involved, but in terms of reputational damage, and if it were other organizations, or possibly even in this case, real personal damage that could occur, it's significant. So as an organization, how do you prevent that? Well, that latter point, no CIO in the world can do anything about that. This is about awareness, it's about training, it's about practice, it's about checks and balances within the organization. Maybe someone else should have looked at the file before somebody hit the post button, that sort of thing. And to do that right, we need to increase the awareness across the whole organization. So to me, it's a horizontal growth of awareness, skills, and practice.
I think it will naturally have to evolve, meaning that businesses are becoming more interconnected with other third-party service providers, supply chain. Consumer expectations are increasing around privacy and security. So the bar is just continually being raised. And we all know that cyber hacks and threats are constantly evolving and becoming more complex. So I think it just naturally will have to evolve over time. And again, I go back to the guidance that Institute of Corporate Directors is giving, CPA and all these organizations that are helping support management and boards to rise up to the challenge that customers and citizens are expecting, and business partners. Because it ultimately comes back to trust, and similar to what Jeff was talking about, the reputation and trust, and you want to have kind of your ducks in a row, and be able to respond with a defensible position.
I'm going to make this comment, and you're going to go, "Who was that fitting guy that brought up onto the stage here?" Gary's numbers were staggering. Staggering. Like when we think about governance, it feels to me like we're a stopgap measure at the organizational level. Like it feels to me like this is now a human society issue that we need to really start to step up our game. We've got climate change activists. We have to get on cybersecurity as an activism type of platform. I don't know what the rest of the panel thinks, but it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And we do need to, I think, start to think about this from either from a government perspective or from some sort of a more national, worldwide thinking opportunity. I am not the guy that's ever going to get that solution, but I am a citizen that wants to see more thought and more thinking about what the global solution is going to be here, because we're all global companies. And we're all humans faced with these threats, and it's going to continue.
We're going beyond CIOs in the room. We've got CFOs and CEOs, et cetera, in this group now. I think until my grandmother is in this room, we haven't really hit the high note, right? And I'm saying this because I can't give you a percentage, but a not insignificant number of phone calls that we take, either on 911 or on the non-emergency calls, come from people that have just been defrauded through a classic cyber scam. They got the fake CRA call, they ran out with the gift cards, they wrote a check, they gave out their SIN number, their credit card number, and all we can do is point them to the the Canadian agency that's collecting information on these things, and police don't have a chance to ever recover that. So the reactive stuff doesn't help, right? It's until the people who are vulnerable have a level of awareness and savviness to prevent the damage from occurring, which is a societal challenge. We're not really going to get there completely.
And to that point, one of the challenges is how do we keep from desensitization around these things? So we hear about these breaches all the time, yet we still shop at Home Depot, right? And so the reputational risk goes to a certain point.
I know. I got my Life Labs email just the other day. It literally said, you were part of that database that was breached. Now we don't know what information was necessarily shared. And then I think, am I going to go and change all my passwords? Like, I only booked online one time, but I'm sure. I don't know. I don't know the answer. But
So it's a big topic, I think, for us at the board, is how do we keep that, not just amongst our employees, but in this whole societal challenge, to keep it top of mind, right? That was off cards, by the way, sorry. So Mihai, this isn't so much to do with governance, but when you're looking for a security director or a CISO or a risk management person, what kind of traits are you looking for in that type of person?
I'm gonna start with it depends. Seriously, it depends. It depends on the organization you are, and it depends what kind of cybersecurity strategy you have. And there are some I'm not sure if are you including skills on the traits, or you're talking only about psychological and traits.
All of the above.
All of the above. Okay. So, on the skills are almost like table stakes. They need to be well trained. They need to understand what they're doing. So the technical skills needs to be part of the deal. And usually that's the easier part when you get somebody to actually interview, because there are not too many of them. But the most interesting traits for me are the soft ones, the one that allows them to get in tune with the organization. One of the, everything evolves and the boards are really into it and they understand the risk and all that stuff. But the reality is that the CISO can create a lot of unnecessary friction if it's not in tune with the organization. So emotional intelligence is extremely important. It is probably, I would say, is the number one in my list. Then there are things like ability to work under extreme pressure. When you will be in an incident like that, the emotions gonna run wild. And you can have any kind of plans, but in my experience, you will be unprepared. That doesn't matter what. And it's the CISO that actually has to bring everybody down, calm down, we have a plan, we know what we're gonna do here. Inspire the confidence that we're gonna be okay at the end of it. So that's not an easy one, and that's lots of times it's not a natural trait for a cybersecurity technician. Many times they run straight to the problem solving, the technical issue, but there is a lot of emotion, and the damage. I didn't run the statistics on it, but I believe the statistic is true. The damage is mostly happening in the way you communicate about what you are doing, than in the what you really do from a technical perspective. So again, the CEO will communicate, the CIO will communicate, but the CISO is behind them and gives them the confidence that they communicate the right thing. And if it's not able to give them that confidence, then it's a big problem. So I would say emotional intelligence, ability to stay calm and actually give everybody the confidence that, we're going to get through it together and going to be okay.
Great. Anybody else want to jump in?
Crazy finning guy. I think you guys are going to become marketing professionals. Like, I'm thinking about the success that we've had in finning. Raising awareness in an innovative and creative way for cybersecurity in your organization is just super powerful. I laugh because Susie, our CISO, has been very successful in terms of creating campaigns, gamification, all sorts of different things. And it's working when you send out an ERM survey with a link to a survey. It's like, and everybody's like phoning the CISO's office. Hey, is this legit? Is this actually working? You think that it's some sort of social engineering hack, but marketing and creating awareness for cybersecurity is so important, so important.
Excellent. All right. Anybody else want to jump into that one? We're good? Okay. So that actually wraps up the formal questions that I had for the panel. I actually have more questions, but they want to keep it to somewhat of a tight time frame here for this evening. So I think I'm passing it back to Ed for a few minutes. But I want to thank you guys for your participation. For the Q&A section that's coming on after the break, perhaps we can get Jeff his own microphone. Yeah. Anyway, I hope you got a bunch more questions to ask these folks because they've got a lot of interesting knowledge to share. And thank you again. Feel free to come and chat to these people during the day.
All right. Hey, I just got to make whole here on this one thing. When I was going through the 400 vendors who are sponsoring BC Aware, I've been texted that I forgot one of them. Two. Okay. Oh, Vectra. Okay. Yeah, sorry. That's RSA and Vectra. Sorry about that. Very important, just as important as the other gold sponsors and everyone else. So 15 minutes. I think you can stay in this room if you like, because there is a bar there. Please come on back, and then we'll go through Q&A. Thank you. We have planned another 30 minutes or so, and the whole idea behind these 30 minutes is to get you guys more involved. We want to get your questions to the panelists. If you want to ask something of the moderator, you're welcome to as well. I don't want to keep him too relaxed. Definitely all experts up here. I also want to mention that having been involved in this event as an organizer for much of the year, one way or the other, certainly the second half of the year, I will admit that I'm realizing that we don't have females here on stage, and I have to tell you it's completely random, and but it is an oversight. But it is random in terms of what we were looking for. It's actually very hard to find folks to talk about cybersecurity governance. All right, you're in. And if we come up with another topic, I'm going to go to you first as well. So, but yeah, governance is a tough one. It wasn't even easy to find people to talk about it because it is a process. And when it comes to cybersecurity, people like to talk about technology, and inevitably you talk about people because we talk about phishing, we talk about secure coding, but when you get to processes, when was the last time you were at a conference and the keynote was actually talking mostly about a process, a security process? Anyone? And what was that process? Was it memorable? That's right. We don't talk about processes enough around security, and they are the glue that keeps it all together. If a process fails because of human error or inconsistency or what have you, then your security model fails. So it's very important, but it is a difficult one to. Governance is a difficult one in particular, but it's an important one because it's the top-down effect. We may as well talk about governance first. If we're ever going to start talking about processes in security, may as well start with governance. But again, I guess I'd like to apologize that I wasn't able to muster up some females to sort of be more representative of the actual workforce. I can tell you from experience that I do know some female CISOs, and they are among the best in the industry. Absolutely, and I don't want to name them specifically, but you probably know them as well. So I know that you know. I'm not saying this for no reason at all. You feel guilty. I'm feeling a little guilty. Yeah, I am. But we will move on. We will get past this. And like I said, there's some great female talent, even on the BC Aware campaign. And I did try to highlight that Katie was really the brains behind this campaign this year. You're going to see more females tomorrow in leadership roles in the conference, including at the podium. So hopefully you'll enjoy BC Aware Day as well. Okay, half hour. Okay, it's now down to 21 minutes, but no, I'm just kidding. Let's start off with questions from you. We have some microphones in the audience. All we're going to need you to do is put up a hand, and then I will make eye contact, and then a microphone will wander over to you via our wonderful volunteers. That's all. It's that simple. So we have a hand up, I have eye contact, and we have a microphone.
All right, got one for Jeff. You actually said the cyber incidents are like a hockey stick. They're going up. It's no longer a risk just to IT, it's a risk to the whole business. Now we're looking at the board level. It's fantastic. Did you want to clarify that? Is it fantastic that the board is looking at it, or is it fantastic that the incidents are growing? Who said that?
I think the hockey stick.
I think the hockey stick analogy
was
mine,
Eric.
but you can take it if you want.
But yeah. Actually, I don't know the question. Sorry.
Is it really fantastic that there's so many cyber incidents?
No.
No, not
You're a
at all.
consultant, quite possibly. It is, Eric.
Well, it's good job security for everybody in this room. Like, we are ultimately wanting to work our way out of a job, but I don't think that is going to be coming anytime in my lifetime, personally. It's just going to keep on going up. So I think it's, when I use the word fantastic, it's good that the conversations are happening. It's not fantastic that there are breaches and threats and kind of the carnage of what happens with cybercrime. That's horrible. Yeah, I hope I explained my position. Like, it's not fantastic that cyber threats are happening. So.
I want to add something to that because I agree with that statement. It's fantastic that the awareness is rising, and I actually think we're in a just-in-time kind of moment, because even though cybercrime has cost a lot of people money and it's cost businesses money, it's been about money up to this point for the most part. There was a bit of a scare. We all remember Y2K, that system failure could shut down critical infrastructure. Didn't really happen, maybe because we did something about it, maybe because it wasn't as big a deal as some people thought. But the real infrastructure risk to the world we live in that can be driven through cyber attacks, to me, is very significant. And in my role, I have had to spend time looking at that, and I am concerned about it. And so I agree that it is fantastic, great, whichever, that the awareness is really rising, not only within the corporate structures, right through the board levels, but back to Jeff's societal point, in a broader sense. because lives may well come to depend on this.
Great. Another hand up. Oh, we have Kimberly from Palo Alto Networks. How are
Or
you?
from Isaka, Vancouver.
And I saw Vancouver. That's right.
Kimberly St. Pierre. So I have a question regarding one piece of advice that you would give C-suite individuals in extracting that knowledge and that technical data that is then articulated into high-level business risk terms. Because I work in the vendor space. I've spent a number of years in the reseller space as well, and there's a massive disconnect when you talk to individuals that are in that tactical level compared to the C-suite level. How do we break that barrier? How do we cross that? What is your advice in helping our peers in the room, and what does that message look like?
I don't think it's that difficult. You need to translate technical risk to business risk. And you need to understand your client's business to understand what that is, right? So for Finning, it's share price and other financial pieces.
Yeah, I mean, again, I come back to the dimensions of risk. And, we talk about impact, but it's not just financial impact. There's reputational impact, there's people impact, there's safety impact, there's shareholder, there's all, I think Oliver makes the right point, is you need to frame the discussion with your particular customer or client in terms of what really actually matters to them. And then frame the likelihood discussion, because the likelihood discussion is the more nebulous one. And it's very, very hard to articulate a probability of a particular event actually happening. But when you look around you and all the discussion that we've been having, it's going up. It's going up. And there has to be something that's going to be pushing it back down. And, if you're not pushing back against it, you're going to be feeling the impact, basically.
One thing. Is this working? Yeah,
It
it's
is,
working.
yeah.
It's a little bit of an echo of what Oliver was saying. You have to know the business of the people you're talking to in order to be that bridge, and we need to be practical. Like in the world of Colliers, for example, practicality is the number one. The way you're gonna lose for sure everybody's attention is by position yourself as a fearmonger. It's like you can't just say, well, things will happen just because it happens. You have to put it in the context of what that matters for Colliers. So understanding and putting that risk in the context of the business and being practical, there is never one way to solve the problem. And advice for the vendors: love their technology, all of you, but there are many ways to solve the same problem. So everybody comes and says, this is the only way to do it. That's how you lose the C-suite.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? How about you in the red? Yeah.
So I'm a CPA, and I work with small business, and I also sit on an NPO board. We don't have a lot of money, and we're very small and scared. What is some actionable but affordable advice you would give to us?
I can give it a go. Actionable and affordable advice. Make security personal. So what I mean by that is the same practices and kind of safeguards that you have to protect yourself and your family at home are good security hygiene in the organization and in the MPO that you're working with. I have a lot of MPO clients, and I just try to make it personal. So, and one of the things that we generally start with is personal, awareness within the organization, but we don't make it a training session on the organization cybersecurity practices. We do it as we want you to be safe, and we want your family and children to be safe, and these are the things that you can do to help prevent cyber threats and risks. So I mean, and also there, I think that you know, across you know, the various different vendors and service providers, there's lots of available resources that you can provide to your clients that are quick hits, easy to do and easy to start with. I think that's where you should start, and after that, you can kind of focus your attention and your resources on. Again, I always go back to the crown jewels. So, like, what are the most important things that you need to protect? Focus on that, and those are just two pieces of advice.
Are you okay with the response to any? Do you want anything more out of that?
Well, that's a great start.
Okay, great. Tom, how are you?
Come here again.
Good.
Do I need a mic?
Mic to the front in the center.
Great. Thanks. I think we've got some really good advice from these leaders here, and particularly about the thought of not fear-mongering. I think it's very important. But what I want to ask about is, we as accountants, well, many of us are accountants in this room, is we like to be able to measure and provide a kind of a analytical response to however we spend our money, because money is limited in an organization. Environment versus security. So I want your advice is, how do you balance between qualitative versus which is Eric talked about, versus quantitative, measurements as to why you approach a security solution?
Are you asking this from a perspective of some kind of a generic formula or principle guidance?
I would say, based on your experience from the industry you're in, how do you do it? Because, I mean, you got to balance between two. You got to be able to come up with your business case of why spend money here versus revenue generation or versus other loss mitigation.
Only if I'm positioning myself on the other side than the person I'm talking to. Only then I need to do that case. If not, it's as simple as saying there is a probability for this to happen. In this case, this is the potential impact. What do you want to do? You can accept it, say we are good, which is fine. It's a business decision. You can transfer it and insure yourself against it, or you can put some technology on it and processes and all that stuff. But end of the day, it's a business decision. There is no generic answer to it. But I think what I heard from you, it's about how do you position. And in my experience, every time I position myself to explain and to advocate for a particular thing, I had a very hard time. And the time when I say, well, this is our decision together. I'm gonna take care of the technology part of it, but really together we need to figure out where do we want to put the money.
It's a great question, Tom. I mean, and it's one of those things that is never a right answer. And so I'm going to speak from the Finning experience. So we knew that we wanted to get to a different level of maturity. And so we prioritized on the things that we knew that we had to up our game on. And so in relation to all the other capital spend that Finning could make, we knew we were vulnerable. And so it was an easier decision to understand how making the spend and investing was going to move us up the ladder. And that really built the business case, because there's no really payback that you can actually put a number to. You can kind of conceptualize it, but at the end of the day, if you know you're moving from a 2 to a 3 or a 4 to a 5, there is this now new comfort in the organization that we're going to be safe, quote unquote, which has an intrinsic value that we used as our business case in terms of moving some of the spend forward. And then becomes the board discussion, senior management discussion, all the different factors weigh in, and before you know it, you're moving forward. Have we had to pull back? Yeah, we have. we didn't move as fast as we necessarily wanted to. And so, to Eric's point, we came to a risk tolerance discussion about whether we were going to move as fast or we were going to kind of slow down a little bit in relation to all the other things that we need to do as a business. So, no perfect answer, but that's kind of a Finning reality experience.
I just want to add something tangential to this point, because I think your question's been answered really well. But there is an underlying assumption in what you're saying is that your ability to make progress on security matters is dependent on the amount of money you're willing to spend on it, vis-a-vis versus other things. I don't find money as the constraint. Resources, people with the right skills to get in the industry, whether they're technical skills or social skills, the limited awareness of your employees and the natural human factor of not being able to expand awareness infinitely with instant speed. And I actually find those things are limiting us a lot more at the moment and adopting a better security posture than the money available to try and do it.
Thanks for that. Great answers.
Great, thanks. Anyone else? I saw a hand here. Let's go with the center here in the back. Okay, oh, Drew, I'll get you next.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a more specific question around governance and policy around regulation. Something we haven't really talked about tonight was GDPR and PII and things like that. I'm just kind of, this very specific question, I'm just curious on the panel in terms of active efforts right now in terms of addressing PII relies on data classification and data tagging, those types of efforts. I mean, I'm kind of curious just in practicality, pragmatically, what are your organizations doing right now to address that kind of thing?
Finning, we've hired a leader in what we're calling GSS. No. Decision Support Service, DSS, Decision Support Services. So this leader is really now becoming responsible for our data within Finning. And so she has a roadmap and, again, a maturity model and an evolution, which includes data classification. But it's the whole gamut of decision support. So it's all around data governance, data quality, all those aspects of data, not just classification, that are relevant to an organization in order to be successful in using data to its optimal use with either business or otherwise.
I'll jump in here for a second too. You made the comment about data classification, which is important about identifying what the data is, where it resides. What you're going to find in the next coming years is a huge demand in classifying and understanding that data, particularly in organizations that are starting to move towards not just compliance, but start to move towards AI and machine learning and understanding a little bit more and using those tools in how we actually came up with a decision. So it's sometimes called explainable AI. But you'll start to see some of the vendors and the tools that will automate some of the tagging of data as you ingest it. So when you hear, for example, Finning having autonomous vehicles and we start to do a lot more IoT ingestion, think of our master data management and our data management tools. We still struggle today with the way that we work today. Well, wait till you have reams of data coming in from sensors and devices, and you need to automatically tag that stuff. And compliance is one of the tags that you should be considering when you're ingesting all of that data.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that, and I'm piling on to that answer. Data management and data classification, if done manually, is it's one of the hardest things that you can try and enforce. There are automated tools that help with that, and if I was a CIO in any organization, I'd be quickly looking to try and automate that process as quickly as possible, because You can make an argument if you don't have a strong data classification program in place that is actually enforceable and effective. Cybersecurity program follows that. Like it's difficult to protect the data without the classification and appropriate tagging.
So for us, we are looking at it from at least 3 different initiatives or dimensions, if you want. Primarily, data classification is part of our cybersecurity strategy. It's in there, and there is something like a more high level, and it's a journey. It's a long-term journey how to get. In a global organization like ours, we can't just do it immediately. But then we complement that with specific initiatives as legislation comes up. Like, for example, we are just learning to live with GDPR, right? So that affected all our divisions, not only EU, right? We have EU citizens working anywhere around the globe, so we're going to do that. And as legislation comes up, there is a project really that deals and touches on the data classification as well. And the last one, which we are just climbing the maturity ladder, if you want, which is data in general, not necessarily in the space of the cybersecurity, but we start to prepare for what Brian was saying, to understand our data at a completely different level and start looking at all kind of classifications, standards that we are looking to implement globally. And again, it's a journey. We try to be very, very practical, and we always start with, okay, this is very important. Let's focus only to this one, and then we're going to go to the next level.
Great. I'm going to ask the next question to come from Dragana over here.
So my question is how you bring governance to practice with your board and your executive team. So I'd like to hear how Finning, Colliers, and Ecom does tabletop exercises with your board and your executives.
We don't do them yet. One of the things that Eric was pointing out was response. And, I've been advocating a little bit further down the pipe in terms of being ready for the ransom discussion and what have you. What we have put in place is a data breach protocol. And we've had a number of those occur, like over the last 6 months. Whenever something comes up, a group of us are included in basically a data breach undertaking and the level of the breach and what the next actions are and et cetera. And that's been working actually quite well. But in terms of a full-blown, hey, we're been brought down or we've been et cetera, we haven't got there. We are now right in the midst of implementing a business continuity management plan. And we've done our business impact assessment, and we understand where we're vulnerable from an IT perspective. And I can see it evolving to a point where we are doing the tabletop exercises. And I can see a scenario where we no longer have access to the internet. We have a denial of service attack, which would bring us down because everything is in the cloud, everything is basically out there. And if we don't have access to the internet, we're kind of hooped. So we're getting there. That's the Finning answer.
Appreciate the honesty.
My answer is almost ditto, in the sense that I would say we're at the same level of maturity when you're looking at tabletop exercises, but the maturity level of doing regular tabletop exercises with the entire executive around certain breach scenarios would actually represent a very high level of maturity, I would think. And I don't think many organizations would be at that point. For us, it's really risk-based. So what are the scenarios that are most likely and would be most impactful to occur? And what is our security posture with regards to those? And do we understand our response processes if this scenario or that scenario occurred? And none of those at this time require the entire executive to do a tabletop exercise. But within sections of the operation where a certain scenario has that level of risk status, there are absolutely processes in place and there are validation steps to make sure that things happen in the right way at the right time.
Okay, great. There was about 10 minutes ago, I saw someone put up their hand right after Dragana, so we're going to go over there. It was you, yeah, in the gray shirt. By the way, we have about a minute or two left, but I want to be mindful of the trade-off here. We can keep going with a few more questions, but we all, some people will still want to network afterwards. But what I'm thinking is that we go another 5 minutes or so on questions. Is that okay? Is everyone okay with that? Let's do it. All right. Question from the man in the gray shirt.
Great. Just as somewhat of a related question to the earlier one, I think from Tom, about sort of justification of spend. And I guess my question is, in your organizations, how do you go about measuring success in your program and measuring the level of maturity of the program, whether that's certain KPIs or what you would look to try and get a sense of how well you're doing in the overall cyber program? Because you look at any other function in the organization, IT, you can look at productivity gains, marketing can look at lead gen activities, sales is pretty obvious, right? When you think about cybersecurity, how would you go about measuring it? And you could say, well, you have X number of blocked attempts or whatever, but that could just be a function of increased activity out there, right? So curious to know how you guys would view that.
So we have a couple of ways that we are measuring how our cybersecurity program works. If we start with the board, we are reporting quarterly all material incidents. Success means 0. Then we are measuring against our strategic goals. Every couple of years, we are doing a maturity assessment, and we're looking where we are in the scale that everybody knows, 1 to 5, and where do we want to be. And I'm going to connect with what Oliver was saying, is like not everybody needs to be a 5. A 5 is very, very expensive, right? So we decide where exactly do we want to be, and with these assessments, we measure how successful we are. And then the last dimension is very tactical, and it's against KPIs that are temporarily implemented. Like, for example, we wanted to deploy MFA in whole North America by certain date. So that's a very project level, but it's combined with the awareness and all that. So same with awareness program. We do internal phishing, for example, and we are reporting the numbers. How many people have taken the course, the awareness, how many people have actually clicked on the link. After they clicked on the link, how many they followed up, and so it's not one. It's a portfolio of KPIs and measures that we're using.
Great. I got a hand up here.
I'll add to that.
Oh, you want to add? Please do.
One of the things I've noticed in the clients that I work with, going back to the multiple areas of measurement, one of the big things that I've seen really change, just even in the last 12 to 18 months, is the emphasis on those awareness programs. It's really, really been taken seriously now in most organizations, and the complexity of the awareness programs has really ramped up too, which is awesome. The CIO clients that I work with, though, tend to have one measurement, and that's, do I still have my job?
By the way, I failed the last test.
In Finning, yeah, if you go up the elevator in our Edmonton office, on the plaque is a poster about phishing attempts. So, I mean, it's not a measure per se, but it's to your point, I agree, the awareness thing is absolutely huge. And so it's getting whatever space that we could be putting into that elevator thing, it's the cybersecurity is getting the space right now within Finning. So there's lots of choices of what could go into that, and cybersecurity is getting it.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jeff. We'll go with you.
A question on a tangent. To what extent do you think physical security ties into cybersecurity, and what efforts are you putting into that? Or do you think they're unrelated? Physical security as in, well, security at the gates, visitors coming in, access.
Well, it certainly ties in, right? Whether it's maybe a matter of definition, do you still call it cybersecurity or security in general? Exactly. I mean, where it used to be clearly overlapping was in the physical data center side, and how do you avoid access to physical devices? That's less relevant now, as most physical data centers have moved into cloud environments. So you have to ensure your cloud provider's physical security along with a whole bunch of other metrics they need to provide.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. Great. Any other hands? I see a hand out there, and then I'll get you next. And then we're probably close to done. Go ahead, man in the red shirt. Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, the blue shirt guy.
He's on my team. Michael Pearson, I'm from Abbotsford School District. We're just creating a cybersecurity career program in Abbotsford in consultation with Palo Alto. My question is around the awareness in the educational system and how we can bring cybersecurity awareness into the elementary and middle and high schools to create more awareness from that aspect. Moms with iPads are vulnerable, but how can we create that connection between the power in this room and your political influence to the Minister of Education, not just in BC, but across Canada, to allow cybersecurity to enter into regular, daily conversation with our youth in BC and abroad?
I don't have a good answer for you, to be honest with you, but I was impressed with our Parent Advisory Council, and I've gone to a few presentations in terms of an individual that they bring in to teach parents about social media, cybersecurity, all of those sorts of different things. I mean, I think the PACs are a great entryway as a grassroots level to raising awareness up into the governmental level. I don't know all the politics in terms of trying to influence things, but I have to say that I came away from it engaged and a bit fearful for my children, but I was engaged, absolutely engaged as a parent. So I don't know where you're influencing into, but I think that's a great place to get out to.
Another resource you could look at is the school liaison officer of your local police force. So you're well placed in Abbotsford. Abbey PD have a pretty strong program, and they certainly see cybersecurity as an element of anti-bullying education and those sort of things. I'm sure you could expand on that conversation with them.
Finally, I think that a lot of the vendor communities have outreach programs. I know TELUS we have a global outreach program where we have 3 different courses, not courses, but presentations geared towards different school age kids, I think up to grade 5 and then up to grade 8 or something like that, and then senior, all targeted. I mean, this is the same thing that you should be doing in your corporate environment, is targeted cybersecurity training based upon the risks. So I think that, I think that it's a community and a collective community cybersecurity giving back that a lot of vendors and service providers are doing, targeting school-age kids.
I'm going to add.
Okay.
You should come join our She Leads Tech Girl Guide session that's happening tomorrow at BC Aware. If you are a BC Aware, if you're not, we'd love to come to this Abbotsford School Board to do a She Leads Tech event or a Scouts event. We do look for opportunities where we can teach students of all ages and excite them about coming into the cybersecurity field, because as we've spoken about tonight, there's lots of opportunities and we have a huge shortage. So let's talk after this.
Thanks, Dragana. By the way, Dragana is one of the sterling members of ISACA Vancouver's board, and she does great work with ISACA, and She Leads Tech is becoming a huge part of what is being done at ISACA. Good stuff. Okay, I'm going to have one more question. It's going to be this lady in the back.
So it's not a question. I just want to add on
Okay.
to that. So
Okay.
there's numerous IT security groups, volunteer groups within Vancouver, Victoria, namely ISACA. So you can reach out to them. I know in Victoria last year we put on a conference at UVic, which targeted grade 8 to grade 12. We brought in various speakers from BC government and from the industry to help raise the awareness with the children who are coming through the education system, to get them interested in IT security and cybersecurity. So reach out to the organizations. We have a wealth of resources to help you.
Superb. Okay, one to three sentences. Okay, all right. You're the last one.
Okay, I want to bring it back to governments and protocols, and I want to see if you either have protocols in place or recommendations for the level of involvement of the board of directors in the major security incident. Something like a ransomware attack, where you might have a ransom request, and even though the general recommendation is to not to pay, in the end it's a business decision of the losses. And so do you have anything in place in your organizations that regulate at which level the board of directors should be involved and be a part of the decision if you pay or if you don't pay?
Sorry,
Oh, yeah,
just
go
say
ahead.
from our point of view, it simply falls under general board policy, right? So there are, as CEO, I have spending limits, I have the ability to vary out of budget items. If it's within those, I could make that decision. It's not primarily a policy matter. If it goes beyond that, it needs to go to the board. Now, would I notify my board chair and my audit chair if we had that situation? Absolutely. And that's just good relationship hygiene.
Yeah, we don't have the protocol yet because I'm still pushing. And it's not that they're not interested in it, we just haven't got it onto the agenda yet. But to Oliver's point, there would be no way that our CEO would make a decision about something like that without going to the board chair and probably the board as well. You know, I find the whole ransomware discussion really, really interesting. Like, you know, what is the dollar amount that would require you to pay and just let this go away, or stick your guns and not, hey, we're not going to pay? And then what's the moral aspect of this? Like, if we keep paying, the $1 trillion, to Gary's point, is going to keep going up and up and up and up. We bought an organization that actually had to go through it. It was $100,000, and they ended up paying it before we bought the organization. But it's a really, really, really interesting one, and I think that as cybersecurity professionals, we can help facilitate the dialogue within our organization so that we're prepared when it comes, because we know it is going to come, to have a very structured discussion and a very structured response, I think is what I'm looking for. Because every situation is going to be different. There's going to be no black and white. There's always going to be gray. But if you're prepared for the dialogue ahead of time, I think you're way, way ahead of the situation.
Yeah, we are very similar. So we have guidance, and it's all about who can pay, you know, at what level. In a case of a ransomware, it doesn't matter the amount. It will go to the board because it's actually is not about the money, it's about the moral implication, what you're doing. The board will make a decision. In general, we have also guidance that we will not pay, but doesn't mean that we will not discuss the situation in the context. So it's very hard to say that we'll do one or another, but we do have clear rules in how we're going to make that decision and who's going to make it.
Great. I think I'd like to stop the questions at this point because we're heading up to 9 o'clock. I have a shorter list to thank now than I did at the beginning. At the beginning, I was focusing on the wonderful support from our vendor community and other community sponsors. Now, to close things off, I want to thank the folks who are specifically involved in this event, and the list has to start with the panelists here today and the moderator. So thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Oliver. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Mihai. Thank you, Brian. I'd also like to thank Kelly Turner in the back. She's part of our event planning group. She's been doing a lot of, her and her team been doing so much in the background today. We talked about Katie before. There's a whole bunch of other volunteers here that were helping with the microphones and just helping folks do their thing. Mahmoud, Miguel, Elson. I know I'm going to miss a few. I also would like to acknowledge that the BC Aware campaign organizing committee, which includes Justin Malzewski, who's like just huge. I'm part of this thing. I mean, I can't even get into it. But I also like to thank who's also on the board, and this organizing committee actually reports to the ISACA Vancouver board. Some of those members are here today. I'm not going to get them all, but I definitely want to point out Dragana, of course, Kimberly, who's our vice president of the board, and also Tristan Harvey, who's the president. I guess I should say something. Hey, Tristan, put up your hand, say hello. Kimberly as well. So reality is we can't do this stuff without the board buying in on it, right? And we've been doing this for 6 to 7 years now, and it's been very rewarding for us. Actually, BC Aware and She Leads Tech have been the kernel behind a couple of big awards that ISACA Vancouver has won or is about to win. I believe we are getting a Chapter Innovation Award this year for our work with She Leads Tech. A couple of years ago, we got an award where BC Aware was recognized specifically with Best Large Chapter in ISACA's orbit, which is something like 180 chapters, is it? 223 chapters, and we actually got the Best Large Chapter Award at that time. Yeah, and that was 2018, right? In 2019, we actually got an individual in our board who was the Executive of the Year in all of ISACA. So how many members in ISACA? 165,000, and of those 100, there you go. So we need this background information because Justin Malzewski is the chapter executive of the year globally. So all of that to underscore that we think that BC Aware has been a big part of this sort of emerging Vancouver security community. We want all the dialogue, all the conversations to continue happening even after tonight and everywhere, not just in this hotel, but everywhere. So take that with you back to your employers, and let's keep it top of mind. Thanks very much for coming out tonight.